This is a Fonzie Studio podcast. Welcome to Tales from the First Nations. I'm Jay Idle, and every week I'll share with you a tale and ancient wisdom of the native tribes of North America. I'll be joined by my cats, Dawa and Fonzie, who will undoubtedly make their presence known at some point, so I might as well just list them as co-hosts. We hope you'll enjoy the tales and wisdom, raise your vibration, and enrich your life with us every week. Welcome, friends. Welcome to the 85th episode of Tales from the First Nations. I'm your host, Jay Idle. In the summer heat, it's always nice to have a cooling rain. So today, we'll look at rain stories. Rain holds deep significance for many Native American tribes because it's essential to life, survival, and balance with the natural world. In agricultural societies, such as the Hopi, Pueblo, and other southwestern peoples, rain determined the success of crops, like corn, beans, and squash, making it a direct source of nourishment and community well-being. Even among hunters and gathering cycles, rain shaped animal movements, plant growth, and seasonal cycles. Because of this, rain was not seen as a simple weather event, but as a living force that required respect, gratitude, and careful relationship. In Native American stories and spiritual traditions, rain often appears as a gift from the spirit world, or as the action of powerful beings such as rain spirits, cloud people, or thunderers. Stories explain how rain is brought to the people through cooperation, humility, or ritual, emphasizing that harmony between humans, animals, and spirits maintains the natural order. Ceremonies, dances, and prayers for rain reflect the beliefs that humans are participants in a reciprocal relationship with nature. Spiritually, rain symbolizes renewal, cleansing, fertility, and continuity. It reminds communities that life depends on balance, respect, and responsibility towards the earth. I have 4 stories for you today, and we will begin with a Hopi tale. We talked about snakes and their connection to the Hopi in rain dances, but today we will talk about the connection between the Hopi and the beetles that produce rain. This is their story, How the Beetles Produced Rain. It is hot, and there is no rain. Beetles are very thirsty, and some die. Chief proposes dance to bring rain and makes little song for them. They practice song and go to sleep. In morning, Chief makes 4 Naquaquoses and deposits them west of the little village. He asks clouds in San Francisco mountains to come quickly and bring some water. They dress up for the dance and paint bodies black. Chief prays to clouds, and beetles are formed in the line. They sing songs, and as they are singing, clouds come and water falls so that they can drink. When they have quenched their thirst, they are very happy and run about. I know I'm always very happy in the summer when there's a little shower. Unless, of course, there's a lot of lightning. That can be a bit much sometimes. In our next story from the Seneca, lightning is represented by the horned snake. This is Rain Old Man and the Horned Snake. Once, the Senecas were at war with the Cherokees. They got very hungry, and seeing a bear, they chased it till it came to a den, and one of the men followed it into the den. When some distance in, he no longer saw the bear. He saw fire, and around it a number of men. A very old man looked up and asked, "Why did you try to shoot one of my men?" "I sent him out to entice you to us. I want to send word to the oldest man in your camp. Tell him from me that his friend is here and in need of tobacco. Tomorrow, as many of your people as can come to us." The young man went back to camp, and the next day 5 of his companions, each with a pouch of tobacco, went to the den. When they gave the tobacco to the old man, he was glad and said, "This will last me a long time." One of the men in the den said, "I am tired." "Lie down," said the old man. He lay down. The old man got up and, going to him, rubbed his body from feet to the top of his head. Then, putting down a vessel which he had been holding in his hand, he unjointed every joint in the man's body and cut the body to pieces. He put each piece into a mortar and, taking a utensil, pounded the flesh and bones to jelly and poured the mass into a bowl. Then he took the bowl and the other vessel to another part of the den. After a time he came back, sat down, and began to smoke. Soon he called, "Come out, nephew, you have slept long enough." When the man came out, he looked as light and fresh as a young boy. One of the Senecas asked, "Can you do this for me?" "I can," said the old man, "if you want me to." The Seneca lay down, and the old man did with him exactly as he had done with the other man. After he had carried the 2 vessels to another part of the den, he came back and began to smoke. Soon he called, "Come out, nephew, you have slept long enough." The man rose up and came out fresh and young. He felt no weight in his body. A third Seneca asked the old man to change him, but he refused, saying, "I have done enough. Now I will tell you why I did this. There is a wide opening extending from one end of the world to the other. In this opening there is a great rock, and in the rock is a person with enormous horns. He is our enemy, and we have tried to kill him but cannot. I want the men whom I have made young and strong to try and crush the rock and destroy this person. But first, you 2 must test your strength." The 2 went outside and shot at a rock. It crumbled to pieces. They shot at a large tree. It fell to the ground. Only a stump was left. "Now," said the old man, "you may go to the opening and see what you can do. You will never die, for we never die. Your companions can stay here. I always help my grandchildren. I cover their trail whenever they need to hide it. It is I who makes rain come." The 2 went to the opening and, seeing the rock, shot at it. Then they went back to the old man. He asked, "Did you use all of your strength?" "We could have struck harder," said one of the men. "Go back," said the old man, "and use all of your strength." This time they struck the rock with all their strength. After listening a while, they heard someone coming, and soon saw a man, and strapped on his back was the head of an enormous horned snake. They had killed the snake. The 2 men said, "Our work is done. Rain, old man's enemy, the great horned snake, is dead." And they went back to their camp. It is important to always please the man who makes the rain, for without the rain, what trouble we would have. Our next story is from the Sahaptin and Salishan tribes. They are tribes from the Pacific Northwest and interior plateau regions of North America, living in areas that are now eastern Washington, northern Oregon, western Montana, Idaho, and parts of British Columbia. The story is about a rather selfish coyote that created the Columbia River. This is Coyote and the Columbia. One day, Coyote was walking along. The sun was shining brightly and Coyote felt very hot. "I would like a cloud," Coyote said. So a cloud came and made shade for Coyote. But Coyote was not satisfied. "I would like more clouds," he said. More clouds came along and the sky began to look very stormy. But Coyote was still very hot. "How about some rain?" said Coyote. The clouds began to sprinkle rain on Coyote. "More rain," Coyote demanded. The rain became a downpour. "I would like a creek to put my feet in," said Coyote. So a creek sprang up beside him, and Coyote walked in it to cool his feet. "It should be deeper," said Coyote. The creek became a huge, swirling river. Coyote was swept over and over by the water. Finally, near drowned, Coyote was thrown up on the bank far away. When he woke up, the buzzards were watching him, trying to decide if he was dead. I'm not dead, Coyote told them, and they flew away. That is how the Columbia River began. I can't tell you how happy I would be if I were able to control the weather the way Coyote did. I feel like I'd be less selfish and more careful with that power, but boy, would I enjoy it. Our final story is from a Canadian tribe, but again, the details have been lost in time as to which tribe specifically it comes from. But this is Sparrow's Search for the Rain. Long ago, in a village near the sea, many Indian people were living. Among them was a very nice old warrior who had been given great power at birth, and who thereafter could do many wonderful deeds. There was nothing that was beyond his understanding, for he knew all things. His wife had long been dead, but he had one daughter. She was very beautiful and gentle, and she was as nearly perfect as any woman could be. She took no interest in frivolous things, and she lived a very quiet life. But all the people liked her well, and she was always welcome wherever she went. Her old father was very proud of her, and he said boastfully, "She has inherited much of my wisdom, and someday she will marry a great man." But the girl, on her part, had little thought of marriage or of men, for she said they had small minds, and she would rather live alone than always listen to their boastfulness and their foolish chatter. Soon the daughter's fame spread far and wide through the seacoast villages, and many suitors came seeking for her hand. But her father said, "I have nothing to say. She will make her own choice. She must please herself, for today children please themselves and not their parents." And she said, "I will marry only someone who can amuse me and interest me and keep me company. I have scant liking for dull people." One day Loon came to see her. He was very good looking, though he was somewhat tall and skinny, and his neck was a bit longer and more scrawny than ordinary. But he wore good clothes, and he had great skill as a fisherman. He came because he thought he was very handsome, and he believed that his good looks would win the maiden. But she had no love for Loon, and he had not a word to say. When she talked to him, he only stared, and at last he burst out into loud and foolish laughter. Then the maiden said, "You have a small mind like the others," and in disgust she withdrew from his presence. Then Fox came in an effort to win the maiden for his wife, and for a whole day he cut capers and chased his tail round and round in a circle, trying to amuse the serious girl. But it did not succeed very well, and like Loon, he departed in despair. And many others came, but they met the same fate, and at last the girl decided to see no more of them, but to live alone with her father. The young men of the village were all very angry because the girl had spoken of them all so scornfully, and often they talked among themselves of her proud and haughty air. "She calls us scattered brains," said one. "She says we have small minds," said another. "She must pay for these insults," said a third. So they vowed that they would somehow break her proud spirit and bring her sorrow because of her ideas and her decision to stay single all her life. One of the great men of the village was Whirlwind. He could make himself invisible, and he was often guilty of many wicked pranks. So the young men went to him and asked his aid in humbling the pride of this haughty maiden. As they were talking to him, they saw the girl approaching not far off, and quite unaware. Whirlwind rushed towards her and knocked her down in the mud and tore her hat from her head and swept it into the sea. The young man looked at her plight, and oh, how they laughed. They laughed loudly, and the girl was very much ashamed. She went back home and told her father what had happened, and showed her her soiled clothes and her hair blown all over her face. Her father was very angry and said, "Whirlwind must pay for this. He shall be banished at once." Then her father went to the chief and made complaint against Whirlwind, and the chief decreed that Whirlwind must leave the village forthwith. He had not considered very carefully that the result of this decree might be bad for the village, and he acted hastily without thought. for he feared to differ with the wise man. So Whirlwind prepared to leave. Now his best friend was Rain. Rain had been born without eyes. He was black, blind, and Whirlwind always had to lead him along wherever he wished to go. So Rain said, "If you're leaving the village, I want to leave too, for I cannot live here without you. I will be helpless if I have no one to lead me." So the two set out together, Whirlwind leading old Rain along by his side. Wherever they went, no man knew, for they had told nobody of their destination. They were gone for many months before the people missed them very much. Then their absence began to be felt in all the land, for there was no wind and there was no rain. At last the chief summoned a council, and the decree of banishment against Whirlwind was revoked. The people decided to send messengers to the two wandering ones and tell them what had happened and to bring them back. So first they sent out Fox, who went on the quest. Fox went through the land for many weeks, running as fast as he could over many roads, in and out among marshy lake shores and over high wooden mountains. He searched every cave and crevice, but he had no success. Not a leaf or a blade of grass was stirring, and the country was all parched, and the grass was withered brown, and the streams were all getting dry. At last, after a fruitless search, he came home and shamefully confessed that his quest had failed. Then the people called on Bear to continue the search, and Bear went lumbering over the earth, sniffing the air and turning over logs and great rocks with his powerful shoulders, and venturing into deep caverns. And he made many inquiries, and he asked the mountain ash, "Where is Whirlwind?" But mountain ash said, "I do not know. I have not seen him for many months." And he asked the red fir and the pine and the aspen, which always sees Whirlwind first. But they were all ignorant of his whereabouts. So Bear came home and said, "Not a trace of either of them have I found." The chief was very angry because of the failure of Fox and Bear. But the wise old man said, "The animals are useless on a quest like this. Let us try the birds. They often succeed when the animals fail." And the chief agreed, for the land was in great distress. Many fishing boats lay silent on the sea near the coast, unable to move because Whirlwind was away, and wells and streams were all dry because rain was absent, and the grass and flowers were wilting in decay. So they called the birds to their aid. The great crane searched in the shallows among the reeds, thrusting his neck into the deep places. And crow looked among the hills, and kingfisher flew far out to sea, but they all came back and said, "We too have failed. The wandering ones are nowhere on the land or upon the sea." Then little Sparrow took up the search. Before he set out, he plucked from his breast a small down feather and fastened it to a stick no bigger than a wisp of hay. He held the stick in his bill and flew off. For many days he went towards the Southland, all the time watching the feather hanging on the stick in his bill. But it hung there motionless. One day, after he had traveled a great distance, he saw the down feather moving very gently, and he knew that Whirlwind must not be far away. He went in the direction from which the feather was blowing. Soon he saw beneath him soft green grass and beautiful flowers of varied colors, and trees with green leaves and many rippling streams running with water. And he said to himself, "At last I have found the wanderers." He followed a little stream for a short distance until it ended in a cave in the hills. In front of the cave, many flowers were blooming, and the grass was soft and green, and the tall grasses were nodding their heads very gently. He knew those he was seeking were inside, and he entered the cave very quietly. Just beyond the door, a fire was smoldering, and near it lay Rain and Whirlwind, both fast asleep. Sparrow tried to wake them with his bill and his cries, but they were sleeping too soundly. Then he took a coal from the fire and put it on Rain's back, but it sputtered and fizzed and soon went out. He tried another, but the same thing happened. Then he took a third, and this time Rain woke up. He was much surprised to hear a stranger in the cave, but he could not see him because he was blind. So he woke up Whirlwind to protect him. Then Sparrow told them of the great trouble in the North Country, and of the great hardship and sorrow their absence had brought to the people, and of how sadly that they had been missed, and of the decision of the council to call them back. And Whirlwind said, "We shall return tomorrow, if we are so badly needed. You may go back and tell your people that we are coming. We shall be there the day after you arrive." So Sparrow, feeling very proud of his success, flew back home. But when he arrived after many days, he went first to his own people to tell them the good news. And the Sparrow people all gathered together and held a feast of celebration. And they twittered and danced and made a great hubbub in their excitement, because rain was coming back on the morrow. Then Sparrow went to the chief and said, "Oh, chief, I have found Rain and Whirlwind, and tomorrow they will be here." And he told the story of his flight to the south and of his discovery. And the chief said, "Because of your success, you will never be hunted for game or killed for food." The next morning, the two travelers, who had been so long away, came back to the land. Whirlwind came first, and great clouds of dust foretold his coming, and the sea dashed high against the rocks, and the trees shrieked and tossed their heads, all dancing gaily because of the return. When Whirlwind had passed by, Rain came along following close because of his blindness. For several days, Rain stayed with the people, and the flowers bloomed, and grass was green again, and the wells and streams were no longer dry. And since that time, Wind and Rain have never been long absent from the Atlantic coast. And to this day, Sparrow people know when rain is coming. And to signal his approach, they gather together and twitter and hop along and make a great hubbub, just as they did when their ancestors found him by means of his down feather in the olden days. But the Indians have been true to the chief's promise, and they will not hunt sparrows for game, nor kill them for food or for their feathers. For they remember that of all the birds, it was Old Sparrow who long ago searched successfully for rain. It is terrible to end a friendship or relationship of any kind too hastily. Sometimes what seems like a good idea through the eyes of strong emotion is the idea you will regret the most later. It's good that the Wind and Rain forgave the foolishness of the council and returned. It's with respect and gratitude that I offer you my blessing, and thank you for sharing my journey with me and sharing your time with me on this podcast. I wish you well and look forward to sharing another story with you next week. Go in peace, return in peace, and may you be well. Our first story today, How the Beatles Produced Rain, comes from sacred-texts.com and can be found in the book The Traditions of the Hopi by H.R. Voth, published in 1905. Our second story, the Seneca story, Rain, Old Man, and the Horned Snake, also comes from sacred-texts.com. Story number 3, Coyote and the Columbia, comes from AmericanFolklore.net and was retold by S.E. Schlosser. Our final story, Sparrow's Search for Rain, is from the worldoftales.com and can be found in the 1922 book Canadian Fairy Tales by Cyrus McMillan. For more great stories and legends, join me here next week for another story on Tales from the First Nations. I'm Jay Idle, and I'll talk to you next time. Music is provided by my dear friend Scott Brocklesby, and our podcast Image of the Moon was provided by Mark Lawton. We will see you next time. All right, that's it. How'd we do, Dawa?
Awesome.
Phones? Excellent. Then I'll share it.